Okay, so the recording started. Welcome again to Make the Cut and Popup Card Studio question and answer webinar. Tonight is April 29th, 2014. Thank you for joining us. Thank you also to Susan and Julie who are helping tonight. And Julie actually will be taking one of the questions. I've already gone through the ground rules, and each week I post a thread on the forum to allow people to post questions ahead of time. And so that's where we're going to get started tonight. So the first question will be a quick one. Sam Heap asks, when do we expect a big update for Make the Cut again? And you will be, anytime there's an update, it will be posted on the forum and it will be posted at the top. And when it comes, it comes. So there's no scheduled time at this point. So the next question is from Skippy, and she wants to know, for those of you that have lots and lots of different fonts, what are some of the ideas and interesting and different ways that you can use the fonts? And Julie has volunteered to start this process. So Julie, if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to you.
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, I'll let you know when we see your screen, and then I'll go on mute. Okay, we see your screen.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I assume you can hear me. I'm not sure if this is what the kind of thing you had in mind, but I like to play with fonts and do all different kinds of things with them. So I was just playing with some today. I'll show you some of the things that I came up with. Other than using alphabet letters for text, I like to create designs with different letters and different styles and do different things. So I did a few fun things. This one was made with the letter S from a font. This one was made with the same letter S, only turned sideways. This one was made with the letter K from another font. This one was made with the bracket from Bell MT font. This one was made with a tilde from here to here, a tilde from another font, and this one was made from another font. So I thought I would just show you what I do to use one little idea like this little piece of a font. I think this was a dash. I make notes because I forget. So I do have some tutorials that you might want to look at in the Make the Cut Toots or MTC Toots group. And the MTC Toots group in Create a Doily from a border. I show how to do this kind of design from a border using Make the Cut. And let me show you where that is. You go to MTC Toots and you go to Files and then go to Intermediate Lessons. That was Intermediate Lessons. Yeah, or 2. I think it was Basic Lessons. Let's go to Files, Basic Lessons. There are a few tutorials here that you can follow if you want something to print and follow step by step. How to make a doily from a border is the first one. That's one I use to do this type of round design out of a straight border. And how to make a title bar That one is right here. And the other one is, there's another one on in the intermediate tutorials. I'm making a family frame. I wonder if I have that open. No. So if you want some tutorials with some ideas using some different shapes from fonts, you can go through some of these here. I think it was a family frame. So I thought what I'd do is show you the process that I go through to use an idea from a font. Let's say this idea and this little flower idea, to come up with a whole set of files that could be a kit, a coordinating kit for cards or scrapbooks or any project that you might be interested in using. So the first one that I'd like to show you is a simple brace. This one here is very simple. And I want to do a brace. I looked through all my different fonts to find a brace that would work for my project. And the font that I found that I liked the best was called Bell MT. So I'm going to get that up for you to show you how I made this particular project. And you can use any one that you like. I just happen to like the brace. You can change the size of your font to be big, or you can show more of the shapes, make them smaller by moving this slider underneath the window. And just scroll through the different letters to see what they look like. Now, I'm looking at the, you don't have to scroll through. If you know you like it, you could just type the symbol. But this is the brace that I want to use. So I can either double click it here and it shows up on my screen where my caret is, or I could click on the T and just type the brace on my keyboard and it will come in also. So there's two ways to get those in. You can then, once it's on your screen, you can resize it the way you want. Now, I think what I'll do is just move these over here. And it's very simple to make what we call a top note shape out of this particular character glyph from this font, just by doing some copy and pasting and rotate. So with this selected, I'm going to do a copy, edit copy or Control C, and then I'm going to do a paste in place. So we've had some questions this week. If I use paste, I'll get a small shape. But if I use paste in place, I'll get exactly the same shape on top of this. And you know it's there because you can pull it aside. What I'm going to do is rotate this 90 degrees. Then I'm going to move it into position. And I'll type a 4 and a 3 to zoom in real close to make sure that I've got it aligned exactly the way I want it. I want this inner corner here, right here, to line up perfectly. I don't care about the rest because they're going to be welded. Then I'm going to type a 1 to back out again and maybe zoom out a little bit more. Okay, so I have half my shape. I'm going to select everything and copy, Control C, and paste in place, Control Shift V, and then I'm going to rotate again twice and move these into position. You know, Susan does that a little differently, but this works. Type 4 and 3 so I can zoom in and make sure I've got my everything lined up right in the corners. You can use the arrow keys just to fine-tune that. I'm going to check the other side. That looks good. So now I'm going to back out. Now that I have it the way I want, I'm just going to select all of these by dragging around them, drag my mouse around them, and I'm going to click on the weld button here to make them all one piece. It shouldn't take so long to weld. I think I have a lot of things turned on here. Once it's welded, then all of these pieces are just a single shape. So how do I get from here to here? What I want to do next is break this. I'm going to click on it. It's already selected. But I'm going to click on the break icon down here to separate the inside piece from the outside piece. And then I'm going to select that piece. I'm going to turn it into a lattice. To do that, I just click on this lattice icon at the bottom of the screen. Make sure that all 3 boxes are checked, and I can adjust the size of the lattice, the angle, and everything. I leave it pretty much at the default, although I may move some of these, the width. If you move the width, you can get a fatter lattice. You can get more of a gap or less of a gap. Whatever looks good to you, then click on Accept. Oops. Before you click on Accept, you have to apply it, so preview it. And after you preview it, if you like what you see, then you can click on Accept. So now I have all of this as lattice. Looks okay, so I'm going to click on Accept. And now to make it look like the end product, I'm going to select it all and join. Now this is what it'll look like when it's cut. So I like to put all of my shapes on a mat, and to do that I click on the shape, and maybe I'll resize this a little smaller, and click on Shadow, the shadow layer icon at the bottom of the screen. When I'm doing a shadow, I'm going to do a blackout for this one because I don't need a shadow of all the lattice. I just want a shadow for the outside. And maybe a 0.15 width. You can make it whatever size you want. That looks good. Blacked out, and I click on Accept. And when you do a shadow like this, it will automatically put the shadow layer on a different layer of the design. So I'm going to make the shadow layer a light color by clicking. I click on the color icon and then click the color that I want it to be. And then the original layer, I'll make it burgundy so you can see. So now I have a lattice with a shadow. If I would like to, I could put another, like on this one, I could weld another shape to it if I would like. I'm just going to stack these two. So I move them, or I'll do Control Z, undo. I can take this, if I forgot to make another one before I welded, I can hold Control Shift and drag to make a duplicate, and then I can black this out by using this blackout. At the bottom of the screen, the black icon, and then just make this a little smaller. And then I can select all of this and just type S to stack that in the middle. So this is, if you want like a frame, this is more like a doily, but with, if you want it like a frame, again, you make sure it's all centered by selecting it all and typing S. You can click on the centerpiece, hold Shift, and click on the lattice part, and then weld. The weld is, again, on the bottom, or Control plus W, and it'll just weld that solid piece inside of the lattice. So then you would have a frame. So that's how we got this particular one. If you didn't want the frame in there, you could just do a lattice like this and put it over the original. So any questions about that one?
They asked if you could put that basic shape into the gallery.
This design, the whole design?
I'm assuming that's what you meant. She just says, can Julie put this basic shape into the gallery? Lee, do you have any more?
So,
the bracket shape.
okay. So just the basic shape that I used. So I'll go over how I got that. I have Bell MT, and I double-clicked on the bracket and got that bracket right here. So that's the piece you want. I can send that to the, I can export it by going File, Export, Selection, or
yeah, selection to SV, or selection as SVG to MTC Gallery.
So we'll call this a.
She said she wanted the four welded together.
Okay.
So I guess, yeah.
Let me copy this, and I'm going to open a different project, and I'm going to Control Shift V to put it in here. It will make. I'll just repeat that again so you can see it. It's Control Shift to get a duplicate, rotate it, and zoom in to make sure the corners are good. And this is where I use my keys. Select it all. Then I'm going to copy, Control C, and rotate this one twice, and Control Shift V, and we'll move this into place. Zoom in, make sure it's all right in the right place. Sometimes it looks like it's right, but when you zoom in real close, you see that it's not quite exactly perfect. And then we'll zoom back out, and if it's the way we want it, we're going to Control A to select all, and then weld. I guess it's because I'm on the webinar that it's taking so much time. And then I'll export this as a project. Export selection to project to MTC Gallery. Let's try that again. Export project to MTC Gallery. Is that what it's supposed to look like? We'll call this top note. Saving it to my desktop. Oh, there it is. So I'll type in top note. Frame from Bell MT font. Grace. Category, we have frames. Things. And I made it, so we'll post it. So it should be in there, hopefully. Any other questions before I move on?
She asks, why didn't Julie weld the two pieces first before copying? I think it's just a matter of preference of...
I didn't weld them until they were all four together. But yeah, you can weld it first or you can wait. I usually wait until I have all four pieces in place because sometimes when I zoom in, I see that they're a little off and I want to make sure all are in place before I weld them.
Okay. Then the other two questions have to do with something that somebody sent me an email and something to do with Popup Card Studio, so you can keep on going.
Okay. The next one I'll show you is this. This is a simple one using the letter S. I use the script from Christie font. So if I go to Text and Fonts, I can type in, I think I could type in C. Yeah, it'll take me to the C's. And in the Christie, these are some that I just picked randomly. Christie has some nice, interesting shapes. And right now I'm looking at my letters as shapes rather than text. So I click on the T and type in a capital S and accept. I get this S design. And you can make the S any size you want. And what I did with this one was to add a circle from Basic Shapes. Double click on the circle. I typed in CI under Fine. That gives me all the circles. And make the circle any size that you want if you're going to make a frame. I was thinking this is kind of like a sun for a nice summer page. And you can make a circle the size you need it to be, and it could always be resized later. Click on the S, hold down the Control key, and drag the S over the circle. Then you see while you're dragging that the cursor changes to a square, circle, and triangle. Then you can release the mouse and the Control key. And for this one, we'll turn off warp, and we'll just repeat the count. I think I want these spacing to be closer. So I can move this over. It's already over as far as it can go. So I'm going to maybe make this spacing this too close. So maybe an 0.5 minus 0.5. So that the letters are almost overlapping here would be good. And then to increase the number of letters you have, you click on the up arrow, and then you can adjust the spacing a little bit more so you can fill it in more. I think maybe I'll make it 6. There we go. This is just more or less, you can guess how you'd like it to be. And then the vertical alignment, you can change the distance above or below the circle. And depending on what you're looking for, you can adjust the vertical alignment how you want. I think that's kind of a nice sum there. When you get it the way you want it, you click on Accept. Now what I like to weld the paths, it's talking about, do I want the letters around the outside welded? And I'll say, yes, I would. So it's going to weld those letters together while the circle will still not be welded to it. And I have this design here. Now if I wanted to, I could weld the circle to it as well. Let's make it a little bigger to black out the middle of that. It just depends on what you want. I selected all and type S to center it, and I'll keep a copy of that circle by holding Control-Shift, and I'm going to select all of this and weld it together. Unless you like that. I like that design in the center. You can just kind of do whatever you want with it. So it welded that. Now if I would like a hole in the middle, maybe for a saying, something about summer or summer fun, I'm going to grab that and type S to stack it, and then join, using the join icon at the bottom to put a circle in it. Now I could resize this whole thing, and then I could put a shadow around it just for interest. When I do a shadow, I like to make it big enough, but not too big. And you could use blackout or not. I'll not do the blackout this time so that I have a hole in the middle. And Accept. And then I could change the colors again. I'll do this one maybe gold, and this one maybe yellow. And I have another design different from the original, so you can kind of do whatever you need for your project. You could add, again, you could add text in there if you wanted. You could make the whole bigger or smaller. But the idea is, for this demo, is I showed you that just using a letter, you can make a design. Now, we could do the same thing using the letter S, rotated on its side. So if I rotate it using the rotate 90 degrees, I can do the same thing by just, again, grabbing that circle, double click on it to add. Now in a big circle, now it's on its side, I'll hold the Control key, drag, release, and then I can maybe change this to a different number and just keep adding. You could change, just kind of get an idea of what number works for you. And when you like the effect, click on Accept, and do you want to weld? You don't have to weld if you want to make adjustments. And then you have a different effect here. Same letter, but a whole different design. So this is the one made with the S on the side. This is one that I made with the letter K. I just started looking at the letters and thought, oh, that's an interesting K. It's still the same, the Christie font. And you just start playing with it. Right here, I turned it upside down, so you can use flip to get this idea right here. And what we're doing is using this as what we call an artistic motif, or an idea, and just repeating it over and over. So I use Control-Shift to drag another one off, then flip it over, and line them up to the bottom by typing B, puts them on the same plane. Then I can use my arrow keys just to kind of move it over. And once I get one side, then I can copy, Control-C, and rotate, then Control-Shift-V to paste this back. And then if I want to overlap these, I could put them any way that I want. Once I have them kind of the way I want, then I can do another copy, Control-C, and rotate twice, Control-Shift-V to place it, paste in place, and just kind of move them where I want them to be. Now you can select just the horizontal ones and type H. Oops, I don't want to do that. They weren't welded. And that's one reason why you might want to weld, so that when you're trying to align them as a unit, you can. Now with those two selected, I'm going to type H so they align horizontally. Now I'm going to weld the bottom two and the top two. Then select just the top and the bottom and type V to vertically align. So now it looks more like the shape, symmetrical shape, and I can select all of them to weld. On this one I just did a couple different shadows to make three different colors for just a kind of an interesting frame. So you can just click on the shadow and create a frame. And then what I did was take the second one and do a blackout on it.
Brian, your microphone's on.
So I'm going to
No, that wasn't me.
shadow this again in blackout. Maybe make it a little bigger. And just change the colors so we can see. So you get the idea on that, just made out of a letter K. So there's so much you can do with just letters. So we did that one already. This is another one that I made with a tilde. The tilde is next to the number 1 on your keyboard at the upper left, at least that's where it is online. And I used a tilde from, I think it was, let's go back to the bell. I think that was, or it might have been from the Chopin script. Let's look at Chopin's script. I love these elegant fonts here that have all kinds of twirls in them and swirls. Go down below the lowercase, I believe. That's where I found this other fancy thing. Down there. There were 2 Chopin scripts. One of them had all the characters and one didn't. Oh, there it is. This is a tilde from Chopin's script. It's not the one I used in here, but I'm going to double click it just to keep it. And then there's the Edwardian script that I use. You can get all kinds of fonts that already have dingbats and nice decorative elements, but I just decided I was going to try just using a font instead of a dingbat font. So there's Edwardian script. And one I liked on this one was a little flower. I put notes because I can't remember from 1 minute to the next what I used. So I do recommend if you're playing with fonts that you go ahead and I think the asterisk would be, it's above the number 8. Yeah, that's it. So this little dealy bobber I used in one of them. And then the bell, I think, is the one that had the tilde bell. And I will click the T and type that key right next to my number 1 with a shift and accept. No, that's not the one. Raise. Oh, that's because it's not bell. Okay. So this is just a little different shape from that first top note design that I did. So to use it, to get kind of a different take on it, I did a copy and a paste, Control-Shift-V, and then I did a error. And you could do it this way to get this kind of shape on your top note or your frame, or I did it this way. And again, I'm going to select them both and type T to line them up on the top. And I'll weld them so that they're one piece. It'll be easier to line up. And then, again, copy Control-Shift-V, paste, rotate, move it into place. Type 4 and 3, make sure I've got them lined up. And I don't. See, my vision's not very good, so that's why I always check. An arrow up till those inner corners meet right here. Then hold a shift and select both pieces. I'll zoom back out. And copy, Control-Shift-V, paste, and rotate. I'm going to weld it. No, I don't need to weld it. Copy, paste in place. Rotate twice. And make sure I get this put right on the corner. Type 4 and 3 to zoom in. And make sure these are lined up with my arrow keys. Okay, now I can, looks right, so I can weld. So how did I get from this shape to this? This is a fun shape. This is the inside piece here. Then there's a lattice, and then there's a solid shape here. So I could do the, I'm going to copy this. Just Control-Shift, drag. So I have the extra one here for the inside piece, and I'm just going to make it smaller and do a blackout. So that's how I got this little piece here. I'll get that out of the way. And then the outer piece is a shadow, blackout. So I'll do a shadow. Then I think I'll make it about a 0.25. Yeah, it looks right. Accept. So I have an outer shape here. I'm going to turn this to green so you can see my layers. This line, I'm going to, when I select the inside shape here, it's not broken yet. So while I work with the inside, I'm going to send that one to the top by clicking on the second, the smaller of the two green plus icons. And I'm going to hide that while I work with this one. So this one, I'm going to break this apart using the break icon at the bottom. And now I'm going to turn this, I'm going to hide this one, send it to its own layer, and hide it. Now I'll show this outside one. I'm going to turn this inside one here. Make sure I have the right ones. I want this inside one, I want to turn that into these rhinestone holes. So I'm going to click on the rhinestone tool at the bottom of the screen and select whatever size holes that I want and kind of place them where I want and preview them on the mat. And I can move this around. Maybe I want them a little more spaced. Or a little less spaced. And they're previewed on the mat. Every time you move it, you have to preview again. I'm kind of looking to see if I can get those holes lined up better at the top here. That's what I want, pretty much. And then hit accept. Now I could break those apart, just split them using split, so that I could maybe move them a little more centered. Sometimes it's easier to move with the mouse key. Not the mouse, but the arrow keys. And then once I have them where I want, then I can just select them all and join. Once I have that piece, then I can show my outside line there, which is this outside cutting line. Now this is the cutting line here. That would be a mat. I think I made them with the wrong one. Let's say I want to do a lattice with this one. I can line this up. I could take, I'm going to select them all and stack. Type S. Just make sure they're all centered. And I'll hide that outside line. And I'll hide this one for now. I'm going to turn this one into a lattice using the lattice. Apply and preview. And accept. Now I can select this shape. And then join. Then I'm going to empty all these empty layers. I'm going to delete them by clicking on the trash can and show all these layers. Now if I do I make this a different color, this one a different color, and turn on the contrast, and you can see kind of, I even have a totally different look here than I had here. So you can do whatever you like to do. Use different spacing, different size lattice, solid, alternate. So this is just done with that one little shape from a font. So I go back here, and it was a tilde. And I'll move it up here so you can see it. Make it a little bigger. Really nice design, just made out of one glyph from a font. So any questions on that one?
Nope.
Now when you get tired of me, just say so.
No, someone just said the whole new design world just opened up for them. So thank you very much, Julie, is what that one comment was.
Okay. I have, I'd like to show you this one. This will be the last one I'll show you unless there are other questions. But I really enjoyed playing with this one. I use this character from the Chopin script, font. I showed that to you over here. Let's see. I will find it again. It came in real skinny, and when I'm doing cutting designs, that's really too skinny for me because it will tend to tear. I mean, if I wanted a very super elegant wedding thing, I might use this, but I still might need to thicken a little. So I'm going to show you how I thicken it, and maybe I'll I made all these different designs using just this shape and this shape. This one was from Chopin's script, ES, and this one was from Edwardian script. And I did all of these designs from the two different shapes. So I'm thinking if I close out some of these pages, I might not have so much problem with my computer being slow. Okay, so I'm going to go to type a C to get to the C, so I'm going to go to Chopin's script. And look for that cute little shape. I think it was a tilde. I'm not sure. It just looked pretty. Yeah. There's quite a few nice little flourishes in this font. I think I'll slide this over so I can see more. There it is. There's one that's this way and one that's this way. How about that? I'm going to double click on it to add it to my screen. And again, it's too thin to cut nicely for this kind of project. So I'm going to shadow it, put a very small shadow, probably a 0.02, just to thicken it a bit. Let me do a 5, 0.05. That's too much, and I don't want a blackout. I'll try 0.25. You get a preview here. I think that looks good. So I accept that. Then I'm going to move away the original because it's that thickened one. This is how you thicken a font. I'm going to Control Shift and drag, then mirror. Now you can overlap them. I think I overlapped them some, like this. So the first thing I was looking for was kind of a border that I could use. This will work. I want to make sure they're aligned to the bottom, so I'm going to type a B. Now they're aligned. Now I could go ahead and weld this, or I think what I will do first, I use Control Z to undo. I'm going to hold Control Shift and drag off a copy in case I need it for later. Now I'm going to weld. Then I can duplicate this, go Edit, Duplicate, and I probably don't need 6. Maybe 3 of them, and I want a -0.01, just barely overlapping. That looks good. Now, that looks fine, but I realized that I really like that flower. To add the flower to it, I could make it even more interesting. So I might want to just do this one and put the little flower in between. I'm going to type B to align to the bottom. The flower was in Edwardian script, so I type an E to get to my E's and see if I can see that flower. Oh yeah, it was the asterisk. So I'll just click on the T here and type Shift 8, and that gives me the flower. Now it's kind of like italics, and it's a little bit too thin again, so I'm going to use the shadow to thicken it. 0.025 should be good. Move away the original. And now I'm going to use these distortion handles here and just drag this center one to straighten it up so it's not so crooked. And I can rotate it a bit if I like it another direction. And I'm going to drag a copy of it. Control Shift and drag. So when I add it to my design, then I can resize it using the straight corner arrows till it's where I need it to be. And you're the artist, so you could use whatever shapes you like. Just create your own designs, position them the way you want. Now, if I like that, there was another idea I got, and that was to shadow it a little bigger, like maybe a 0.05, maybe even more. I think I'll do a 0.08, even a 0.1. And then join these two together. Then I could have kind of different style flower there, if you like that better. And I can just weld them together. And I'd like to flip it so that these are down and add a shadow to the whole thing with a blackout. So that'll give me 2 pieces here. I'll make one light and one dark for the contrast. And I'd like to save my little pieces in case I need them for later. I'll move them out of the way. Then I can just copy this whole thing, because when I do a top border, I often need a bottom border. It could be used for the sides. So Control Shift drag and just flip. If I'm using them on the same page, then I can type L to align them to the left. No, that won't work. Undo. Type a V to horizontally align them all. And I can use the same idea here. I'm going to take just this piece here and show you how to do a doily from it. I probably should have select it, hold Control Shift and drag. That way I keep that one where it belongs and I have a whole extra one to play with. Again, I'm going to just get a circle, double click, and I'm going to wrap that border around this circle. Maybe a little bigger. So I'm going to click on the border, hold the Control key, drag over the circle. How cute. I'm going to use warp and reduce my number here down to until it looks good. Oh, look at that. 1. I don't need any copies, I just need 1. It's very pretty. And that looks like it's positioned good, so I'm just going to click on. I'm going to make sure the extend is okay. What extend does is it overlaps the beginning and the end of the design a little bit. And click on accept, and I would like to weld it. So now I have this design all by itself. Oh, I got some ugly stuff right there. I think I way overlapped it. I'm going to undo, Control Z, try it again, hold the Control, drag, and I'm going to get the spacing. I don't want to extend so far. See the space here? I want that space just till it barely touches. And once it touches, I don't want it to overlap anymore. So I'm going to use my arrow key. That's better. Now I accept it, and yes, I'll weld it. I love the Control Z undo button because I'm always using it. So we have this piece here. It can be used as is for a frame, or you can connect the circle to it. I might make it a little smaller, just so it barely overlaps the design. And I'll select both the circle and the design and type S to center them, and then I'll weld. Now I have a doily. If I want the doily to be a frame, again, I can just get another circle, double click, and drag that over so it's the size that I want it to be. We showed how to do a lot of these kind of things, but it's been a while, and we've got a lot of new people. But in the past webinars, we've done this kind of thing before. Now, if I weld this to the pink, right, join it, it's going to all turn black. Type S to center. And what I'll do is I will take this piece, send it to the top, and now I'm going to send it to the bottom. Move to the bottom. And whatever color is on top, the joined piece will be. So I'm going to join now, and I have a ring here. Now I can do a mat for it. And the mat can be small or big. That's kind of pretty. And it's blacked out. If I don't do a blackout, it looks like this. I think I like that. Accept. And then I can change the color over here of the shadow layer, and we'll change that to red. So you get the idea here. So we have a frame that now matches our border. And the other thing that I like to do when I do borders is I like to do a corner. So that's why I save this extra little piece here. I think I'll mirror it and flip it, and then again edit copy, edit paste in place, rotate 90 degrees and flip it. And mirror it. And this is where your creative juices come in. I don't know, I think I did it this way before. So you can do it however you like. It could be that way for a corner, or it could be like that. Then when you get it the way you like, then you can just weld it together. You can add a matte, shadow matte if you want. And I like to make the colors contrasting. Send it to its own layer. I think I got it. And send it to the top, then I can change its color. And type a S to stack. Oh, I know what I forgot. I forgot the flower. That's why it's not working. I'm going to undo a bunch. And I used my original again. And you can skew it as you like. I'll thicken it a little bit. Then I can add that to my corner. I like that better. It hides all those little loose ends. And you're the artist, so you can make it be however you want it to be. I'll select it and weld it, and then make my shadow. Change the color. And I don't know where the inside piece went, so I'll send it to the top. Move to the top. Change it to red. Okay, so if you need 4 corners, you can just duplicate them and rotate them. You can go to Edit, Duplicate, and I'll do 4 of them. Then each one can be rotated a different way. My new fast computer's not so fast with this webinar. Okay, so you have the idea how to make corners, how to make a border, how to make a frame, all with the same little shapes. So any questions on that?
No questions on that. So very good. Another excellent demo. Thank you, Julie. That's from Jeanette, who was Skippy, who asked the question. So very good. Any other questions for Julie on using fonts in new and different ways? Okay. So we did have a couple other questions unrelated to this come in. So Susan, are you ready to do the one question, or you want me to do the other one first?
I'm ready.
Okay, so let me go ahead and switch over to Susan.
I'm ready.
Yeah, let me go switch to Susan. Thank you, Julie. And I'll let you know when we see your screen. Yep, okay, we see it. I'm going to go on mute.
Okay. The question was from Sharon, who's having trouble with the backgrounds of the pop-ups. She wants me to go over how to do it with more than one element. So this is what I've started off with. So I've got the dog and the tree. So we'll cut the dog. So then we end up, I won't go through how to make this because it's just a basic pop-up, but we'll take this over to make the cut. I'll paste that dog. So then you import your SVG, and this is where you do your background. So first off, I'll put this, I'll go over here and put this on to each its own, and I just want to work with just the cut lines. So I'm going to take a copy of the cut lines, copy of that. I'm going to hide everything else, a new layer, and go paste in place. So with that, I'm now going to bring in my pencil tool, and because we've got 2 elements on this, you can do, multiple and multiple elements. We'll just have the 2. So you just, with the pencil tool, hold your control key down and go across and join your pieces. That dog there does have a broken thing, so while it's there, I know that it's close enough to do a fuse and weld for that dog. Go apply, and so the dog, so you know these are now solid because they've turned, they're no longer just broken lines. So with that selected, I'm going to do break apart. Break apart. And this one here, I'm going to get rid of the inners because you're not going to need them. Now, you just take the outer one. Now, I know that my card was 5 inches by 10 inches. So, first off, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the 10 inches and turn that into 5 and enter. Then I'm going to go, with that selected, I'm going to right click and go duplicate, duplicate with no spacing. Oh, type 0 there. And I want 2 rows but only 1 column. So now I've got the back. This square here is the back of my background, and this is for the ground. So what I do now is I select these two, go join, and I'm going to go copy. So that's copied to the clipboard. So with that selected, I hold the Shift key down and select the bottommost square, and I go Boolean join, B to A difference, apply. Now I'm going to go paste from the clipboard, and it's pasted them back in place. So now I'm going to hold the Shift key down and select the top square and do a Boolean join, and I go B to A difference, apply. So now I have the 2 backgrounds with the 2 elements cut out. So then this will go around the tree and the dog part, and then if you cut this out in the sky, it'll go around on the back of the card. But because of the physics in the maths in where the fold lines are, if you cut it perfectly this size, where your fold lines are and in the center where your fold lines are, it will be buckling your card at that point. So what I do is I just select it and do an inward shadow. I usually go about 0.1 millimeter, accept, and I click on this one, do the same, minus 1, did I say minus on that one? I meant -1, accept. Then I throw LY, close the original, and then these become, if I change these to say this is a blue sky and this one for green, and we turn back on our original card, and then I can put these in place. So it gives just a little border around, so it allows for your fold lines, because trust me, I've done it at full cutting of the background and folding and opening the card. It does get all buckled and wrecked where the fold lines are. So does that have any questions, or does that help Sharon, or is she stuck on anywhere else?
So Sharon, as you're typing in the answer to that, there is no other questions regarding that yet. So,
okay.
Sharon, are you? Did you have additional questions about that? Did that answer what you're? Thanks. Good, she says.
I probably, because this is the later way I was doing it, and probably in one of the earlier videos I did make it hard work to sort of work it out. But it's like all my older videos, I've worked out better ways to do things now. So,
yeah, if you do them hundreds of times,
you
come up with some good shortcuts.
Yeah, like me pop-up book, I wouldn't finding the pop-up book, I wouldn't have been able to do that in the start.
Is there any other questions for Susan while we have her? Okay, I don't see any. So the last question we have that people have typed in, let me switch over to my screen here. Oops, picked the wrong one here. Okay, so you should be coming up with my screen here shortly. So Sue asked the question about the basics of layering within a project. So the first thing I'm going to suggest, and then I'll go over some some of the real basics, but again, there's so many possibilities. It really depends on what you want to do. But the very first thing I would do is I would go to Help, Instruction, and Tutorials, and that'll bring up a page, and on that page is links to the manual. And in section, I just happen to have the manual here, so in section 3.12, and depending which version you have, the page numbers may change, but there's a section on layer board. So even though this manual says it's for the the K&K Zing and Make the Cut, chapters 3 through 8 are pretty much for Make the Cut, regardless of the cutter that you have. So even if you don't have the Zing, chapters 3 through 8 are a good place to start. And Sandy's done a great job with this, and she's loaded links in here that'll go to videos. So not only does she go over the basics written-wise, she also has links to videos. So I would highly recommend going through that to understand it a little bit, from that perspective. But in general, you have layers on the side. And Sue, as we're going through here, if you have additional questions regarding the layers or a specific question about it, go ahead and type it in as we're talking here. But anyway, you always start with the default layer, and then as you add things, so I'll just add a couple, texts here. If I do it by clicking or dragging things in, they'll be on the layer that you're working on. If I select something like this, and I don't know if you noticed it when Julie was doing it, and you do a shadow layer, when you accept it, you actually it'll create a shadow layer for you. And if it's an outset layer, shadow, in other words, it was done with a positive number in the layer, it'll actually put it below whatever layer you were working on. If I do an inset, so let me change this to an inset, which means it has a minus. That's probably too big. Oh, that'll work. And I accept it. It actually puts above it because that's just the way it does it. It figures if you're doing an inset, you're going to want it on top so you can see it. If it's bigger than the one you're working on, it'll put it on below. So there are some functions that will actually create layers as you're going through. Another one is if you use the text box to add a group of words. It'll actually create a new layer on top, and it'll actually put in the name of the font that you used, to, the first X number of characters of that. Let's see, there's some other things that probably create layers automatically, but I think when you import, it'll probably create. Let's see if I have an SVG I can import here. Yeah, so when you import, it creates its own layer and that kind of stuff. So a lot of times layers get created for you, and you might want to manage it. One of the things you might notice is, let me undo that. As you do things, let's do a join there. I might start getting you can see I'll start getting empty layers because if you're manipulating multiple shapes and on different layers, and you do like a weld or a join or whatever, the result will end up on only one of those layers. So it's got to put it somewhere, and it'll usually, I believe, pick the top, whatever the topmost item is, whatever layer it's on, it'll use that. So what are some of the things you can use layers for? I meant to say, so let me undo that. So one of the things you can do is to clean up, like as you start doing this and you're starting to formulate your whole design and sort of come to the finishing stage of it, you're adding colors, you may be moving things around. Periodically just go in and do a cleanup with the trash can, and that'll delete any layer. Rather than you looking through and say, oh, this layer's empty, I can delete that or delete that. You just hit the trash can, and any empty layer, it'll automatically delete. There's ways to move it, so let me just move. Right now I'm going to move everything just to one layer, and we'll clean up here. And So anyway, so there's a couple ways that you can. So right now I have several different shapes. So this is a shape. Each of these letters are shapes. The shadow is a shape. The percent is a shape, and everything. So you can do to each its own if you want. I think Julie did this a couple times, and that'll basically take each individual shape and make its own layer. Make it its own layer, and it breaks things up a little bit better for you. So you can see this thing that's this, it's a single shape, but it contains those, 3 subshapes. We did a join or a weld to get that. Sometimes that's a little bit of overkill, like with all these letters and everything. I think that's a little much. So I'm going to undo that. What a lot of people will do, let me just do a couple things here. I'm going to put these words together here. Actually, I'm going to split this one again and put the W with the taper. I'm going to do a join just so that's, in essence, one shape. And these are one shape. So now I have 1 shape, 2 shape, 3 shape, 4 shape, 5 shapes, 6 shapes. Now if I do for it to each its own, it'll create the 6 different layers for me. I may not want the words that it used, for creating it. It's either going to have something like default layer or import, and then a bunch of, attributes afterwards. So you can always rename a layer by saying, these are my quotes. Or you might say, well, this I'm going to make red, this one I'm going to make red, and this I'm going to make red, and I want to put all the reds together. So I can select, actually I probably should have made those 2 red. Let's make this one orange. Let's make this one red. So sometimes people will design, make their designs in such a way that they put all their colors, so each layer is a color. So this is red. Sometimes they do it, by, so one of the important things is, let's go to contrast, and you should be able to see this a little bit better. Right now, you can see that the percent sign, which was going to be, should be over top of this shadow so that we can see it, is actually a layer that's underneath. So let me do a cleanup. So this orange layer is underneath the shadow layer. So there's a couple things you can do that. You can right-click on the layer and say, put it to its top. There we go, move layer to top. So you can move layers around, and then you get different effects. This will, if you're doing a print and cut or you're going to whatever, obviously that looks different than if that layer was below the red, right? Completely different result. So people will use layers to actually, as a layer, if you think of layers in any kind of other graphics program, Photoshop, Illustrator, etc., the topmost layer is going to be above and on top of any layer below it. You can move layers around with just the arrows. So as these arrows here will move it up and down relative to its current location. Or you can right click on the layer and always go to move it to the bottom, move it to the top. So if I want this layer to be on top for some reason, I can do that. Right click on it, go to top. Right click on this and say move layer to bottom, and I'll skip around for you. And again, it's more for organizing your project for when you're actually going to put it into use. So if you're cutting, you're going to do a piecing project. A lot of people will do it, like I said, by color. They'll put all the same colors on a single layer. And then when they cut it out, they're going to cut out, they'll turn everything off except for, say, the red that they're going to cut first, and they'll cut the red layer. What else with layers? We use layers when we're doing vinyl projects if you have registration marks. there are times when you have, let's just say this was going to be a vinyl project for us, and obviously I want to cut out both the red vinyl and the orange vinyl, but I want to be able to use them. I have to keep the location relative to each other in the same place, and so you might want to use registration marks for that. And normally what I do for registration marks is I'll create a new layer on top, call it like reg marks or something like that. And I personally like asterisks, and I will almost always do the asterisks above. They're actually too big. Make this a little bit smaller, because the registration marks don't have to be huge, but oops. So in the case of this, and I would probably line these up a little bit better, horizontal, and maybe bring them down a little bit. So they're above the vinyl that you're cutting, and I've gone over this, reasons why I do it this way. And some people do it on opposite corners. I explain why I don't like that in some of the videos. But the idea here is when I'm going to cut the red vinyl, the reg marks will always be visible. I'm always going to cut those, right? So when I cut the red vinyl, I'm going to have the registration marks and the red layer. I'm going to call this red. Excuse me. And let's call this orange. At any rate, so I would cut this in the red layer, so it would look something like, this. Oops. Let me do it without moving my mouse, and you can see what it looks like. And then when I cut on the orange vinyl, I would close the red layer, open the orange, leave the registration marks, and when I do that, it's going to look like that. And when I layer them using transfer tape, I just put the asterisks of the orange layer on top of the asterisks of the red layer, and then everything will be lined up perfectly. And you can, that's just an example of what you can use layers for. So registration marks can be used, on their own layer, and you have them open for both times, or for each of the layers you cut. When we talked about the print and cuts, there's times when you want to print, like I might want to print, okay, let's close this for a minute. Let's say I want to make this a print and cut. I want to print it so it looks like this, but when I cut it, I only want to cut the outline of the red. And so for that reason, when I print it, I'm going to have both layers open, and when I go and send it to the cutter, I would actually close the orange layer, and then it will only cut the layer that's open, which is the red, which is the outside layer. What other things with layers? There's so many different things you can use the layers for. When you're designing, like
coloring book pages.
Yeah, what about them?
Separating colors into layers for paper piecing.
Yeah, for paper piecing. Yep, I mentioned that. Yeah, so if you're starting from a coloring book layer, is this question that's so Sue? I don't know. Am I hitting any of the points that you were asking, that you were curious about or needed information on? Give us some feedback here. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's lots of different ways you can use the layers. There's so many different ways to do different things within Make the Cut, and each person will do it differently. When we talked about hand tracing something, if you bring in a photograph of something, let's say I want it. Oh, it's not a good hand trace. This was a different. None of these were really good. Okay, let's say that I bring this person in, and I want a hand trace because I really just want a silhouette of them for whatever reason. And I'm having trouble pixel tracing it for whatever reason. A lot of times we'll bring in the whole thing by doing 255 texturized path, bring it in, import it, finish finish it, and then we'll put that on the bottom and lock it, and then in the layer above it is where we might try to do our tracing, and I'll just do a couple pieces here, but so I use it sort of as a reference to get the idea of the shape that whatever I'm hand tracing here, whatever result I want with it, but I'm not touching the photograph underneath. So in that sense, I'm using the layer just as a reference to see through it, to trace, to do something on top of it to trace it. Or here's another example. Let's say that I wanted get rid of that layer. So still on a layer above it, I'm going to get and this doesn't matter if it's locked or not. Let's say I wanted to put him within, like, say, some sort of shape, like, I don't know, like a heart. So I can bring the heart up here and sort of visualize what part of him I want on the heart. And then, again, the technique itself doesn't, there's more to this technique than what I'm just showing you real quick. But I have two different layers, and it's important to do that because I want to be able to have this layer on top, so when I combine them and layer them, I get the attributes of the top layer or the top shape. You can do it all within a layer, and by that I mean, let's just say that I have put everything all in the same layer here. If you notice, when you have multiple shapes on a layer, it has a plus sign next to it. And what that breaks down, some people call these sublayers, which is a misnomer. It's actually, you have a layer and then each of the shapes that are within that layer. So again, on the shape level, I can move things up and down within a layer. But a lot of times it's just easier to keep them on separate layers and then work with them that way. So there was a question here about, in regards to the layers, is there a shortcut key to select all the layers at once in order to reduce or expand the view, or using the plus or minus button? I'm not sure what you mean by the plus or minus button. But the easiest thing to do, let's say I had lots of shapes here. Let me just bring this in. So copy, merge, paste. Okay, so I have a bunch of layers here, right? Let's say that I had some open, some closed, some locked, and whatever. Anytime you want to work with everything on the mat within a certain page, the easiest thing to do is go in first, because you can't select things that are closed. There's nothing to select, and you can't select layers that are locked. Okay? So the first thing you want to do is go to the lock key here and say unlock all. And then go to, and a lot of times you need to do that, especially if you get things from the gallery. A lot of people will put things in the gallery with all the layers locked so that it looks nice for the thumbnail. So the first thing you want to do is go to lock and say unlock all. Go to view and show all. And then the easiest way to select everything, to resize it or whatever you want, is just select this, select all shapes, which is this icon here, or Control A, or you can mark key around the ones that you want. But usually it's just as simple to do a Control A. And then you can size it either with the handles, or rotate it, etc. with the handles, or you can resize it. Let's say I wanted this to be no wider than 8.5, because I only have letter paper. Then I can resize everything so that everything that's selected fits in 8.5, and then the height happens to be, in this case, 8 inches. So that's one way of doing the selecting everything within the page. the other thing that I like to do, so there's a lot of things you can do to manipulate the layers from this side of things. But let's say that I wanted everything except, I wanted the picture to be on one, the heart to be on one, and everything else to be on another layer. So I can move things around, manipulate it here. If I go down the shape level and I click up and it's the topmost shape and I click up, it'll go to the next layer up. And it combines those layers. And then you see I have an empty layer. But for me, the easiest thing to do, the other thing nice about layers, and I know I'm jumping around here because it's sort of a broad subject, on the layers, and also if you happen to have the shapes, if you click on the thumbnail, all the shapes on that layer are selected. So it's an easy way to select everything on that layer. The other nice thing is you can select a layer and then hold the Shift key down and select other layers. And even though you don't see it over here, you'll see over here that I now have all the shapes that were on those 3 layers selected. And so the easiest thing for me to do to combine everything, select the things you want on one layer, and either A, click on this, which moves it to a new layer, okay, and then do a cleanup. Or even simpler than that is select the ones that you want, do a Control X, which cuts it, and then select whichever layer you want it on. Let's say I wanted everything on this layer with the heart except for the picture. Then I can do a Control Shift V, which is a paste in place, or an edit paste in place, or this clipboard with the green arrow paste in place. And it puts it exactly where it was, but now it's going to put it on the layer that's highlighted over here. So there's a lot of manipulation you can do that way. Hopefully that helped that question. Okay, so let's do a quick coloring book here. So let's bring up Mother's Day coloring book. Let's see what comes up with images for that. So let's find a simple one. Of course, none of these are going to be simple. Let's do this one. View image. That's a bad one. So I can X out of this. How about the? Yeah, that's not too bad. We'll do that one. So I'm going to right-click and copy that so that it's in my clipboard. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to leave it in contrast because it's a coloring book page, and I'm not going to put it in contrast. A lot of times when we do pixel trace, we'll put it in contrast so that we can see the raster image if we use texture. But in this case, I'm just doing a coloring page book that I'm going to piece. So I'm going to leave it in green, which is my default one. Paste it, do a pixel trace, do a paste from clipboard. And because it starts black and white, it's going to be, everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave the default setting. I'm not going to texturize it. I'm not going to black out. I'm just going to import it. Finish tracing. First thing I'm going to do is probably size it down a little bit just so we can see everything. So let's say the first thing you might want to do is the leaves are going to be green. Maybe the stems, inner stems are going to be green. And I don't know, maybe we'll make the flowers, yellow or red or blue or multicolors. So one of the things you can do, the first thing I usually start with on a coloring book, because if you're doing a paper piecing or material piecing, a lot of times you're going to keep that outer shape, and that's going to be black, and it's going to be your base. That's what you're going to glue everything onto. So I start with a layer. It's just as an example. And I'm going to select that outer shape, click on to each its own. I'm sorry, not to each its own. This is selection to new layer. We want that to be black, so I turn it black. And right now, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it off so I can see that piece is finished. I'm going to see what else we still need to do. So now we have these pieces here. And now at this point, I'm going to do a split to start with. Now up here we may have to eventually do a break, but I like to do, if you do a split, you normally get less pieces than if you're going to do a break, depending on your shape. So, oops, don't want to move it. Okay, so I'm going to do a split, which is this, or Control P. And I'm going to select these leaves. Let's say that we're going to make these leaves, and I'm going to undo because I just moved it, because I tend to move my mouse as I'm selecting. So I'm going to just do the marquee method here. Select all of those, move them to their new layer, to their own layer, and I'm going to pick a dark green for them, and then close them off. And then say, now I'm going to pick the stems, and I can pick everything except these two, and I'm basically deselecting. Oops, deselecting those. Oops. Now let's just do it. Select, hold the Shift key down, and do a select. I'm going to put them on their own layer, and this is going to be maybe a light green, or whatever this one is, just a plain old green. Yeah, we'll do that green. Now, with this, there's a couple things you can do. If you want the centers to be something different, than the petals, then each of these we'd want to do a split of these. I'm sorry, a break of these. So I have those selected. I wanted to turn those off so we can see that we're done with them. So I'm going to do a break, and then the first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, these pieces, so the big petals, we're going to put on their own, and let's make those like yellow for daffodils or something. Close them off. And then for these pieces, maybe we want, we can select everything that's left basically. Let's do a join so we still get that centerpiece there. Yeah. Well, let's do it this way. I mean, if you're the artist, as Julie said several times tonight, so let's say we're going to do our own thing here. I'm going to make the outer circle of those centers to be maybe a dark, like a golden yellow. And then the last set of things that are still, there's only 3 things left. And so maybe I'll make those, oops. Try this again, Control A. Yeah, there's only those 3 things left. So let's make those, I want to move them on top. So let's make those, I don't know, a red. This probably will look kind of funky, but, and you can see we have a few empty layers, so we can just clean it up, and now we can turn all the layers on, and then go to contrast and see how it looks. And this is, so you can see how everything has sort of a center point, these little crosses in them and little dotted lines around them. This is why people will lock them all, is so you can just take a look at how it would look as a final product if you had the same material being used as the colors you chose. Let's get rid of the carrot by double-clicking over here. So that's one of the reasons why you might want to use layers as well. So that was the coloring book one. So we did that for Sue. Okay. No, so the question on, so let me turn these on. We'll use this as the, so these at this level are actual layers. Let's look at these top, let's look at this one, the petals. And you can visually see that there's 3 shapes there, but you don't know if they're joined or not. But if you just hover over this, you say, oh, there's 3 shapes. The plus here is not, so this is going to show you just the breakdown of this layer in terms of shapes. If this, when you hover over this, if it says 3, then you're going to have 3 of these shape boxes underneath it. So your question is, use a shortcut key to select all those layers so it can hide or view all the child data at once. Well, you don't need to do that. All the childs are included in the layer, so all you have to do is lock or close that layer. Now, if you only wanted to hide or close 2 of those, there's some things, and you can see here, lock and the eyeball are not choices on an individual shape. So if you wanted to hide, say, the top one, but not the bottom two, then you'd actually have to pick the top one, move it to its own layer, and then do whatever you wanted to do with these, either hide them or shut them. When you have the layers open like this, when you have a layer open or multiple layers open, and you see the shapes underneath that layer, you can click on those, and you can see that if you look over here, you can see which ones get highlighted as I click the thumbnail. So whether I click the layer thumbnail, which selects all the shapes in there, or one of the shapes thumbnails, and it selects only that shape. And wherever this one was is its own layer now. So the shortcut for selecting everything on a layer is clicking on the thumbnail for that layer. Let me undo this so we get back to 3. Excuse me. So if I select the thumbnail of these things, I'm going to get all 3 of these selected all at once, even though they're 3 separate shapes. And I can move them separately after that. So if that didn't answer your question, then I'm not sure. So the child data, don't think of these as layers and sublayers, because that's not really what they are. It's layers, and layers have attributes that you can hide and lock, as well as color and delete and moving the layer in relation to other layers. And shapes have colors and delete, so I can delete a specific shape within a layer from here, or move it up and down relative to each other within the layer. Or as I said, if it's the top layer, if it's the top shape in a layer and I click up, there's really no place for it to go, so it goes up to the next layer. See how it did that? Likewise, if I have these shown and I take the lower one and do the down arrow on that, it's going to go down to this layer. So it's not really meant to. You're not really meant to do a lot on these child dialogues here. It just allows you to, if you need to, like let's say I wanted to change one of these colors, I wanted to be on the same layer for some reason, but I wanted to change the color. You can do that from here, or you can right-click on them. There's lots of ways to do things. So I can right-click on a shape and do the same thing, there as well. But they stay on the same layer. So these really are shapes within the layer. The hiding and the locking is done at a layer level, not at a shape level. Is there any way to turn off the balloons that appear under the cursor in the layers section? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Finette. So the balloons, you mean like when I hover over here and I get the number of shapes, or if I click on here and it tells me the number of nodes? Other than that, I'm not sure what you mean by the balloons that appear underneath the cursor. Okay, no, those are just helpful. Those are just helpful, sort of pop-up help. I forget the Windows name for them, but they'll eventually disappear. So if you don't move them for whatever that was, 5 or 10 seconds, 7 or 8 seconds, they'll disappear. Or if once they pop up and you move, they'll disappear too. So, but no, there's no way to turn that on or off. There probably is at a Windows level, but not in Make the Cut. You're welcome, Liz. Okay. So, did I miss any questions in there? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so does anybody have...
No, you've got them all.
Okay, so while we're still recording, is there anybody that has a microphone that would like to be unmuted, that would like to either make a comment or ask a question? Raise your hand, or you can wait till after we turn off the recording as well. Or if you have any other questions. Okay, I don't see anything, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here.